Do you ever find yourself struggling to actually be heard or understood? It's such a common thing I hear from women. And these are from smart women, evolved women, and yet in relationships, they still wonder what's going on. Well, we're diving in today with the amazing Robyn Smith. She is someone who is a master when it comes to communication and how to get yourself heard. We're diving in today, and let's welcome Robyn to the stage. Hey. Hey, Robyn.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So good to have you. You are one of my favorite communication people. And you know, it's so much more than communication. There's so many nuances and what people bring to the table when it comes to wanting that connection and how they get in their own way. Let me tell everybody a little bit about you. So Robyn, aside from the fact that she is a dear friggin' friend of mine, she is an amazing colleague of mine doing amazing work in the world. She's an award-winning speaker and master trauma communication and relationship coach for women. She's the founder of Rock Your Relationship movement. She's helped thousands transform frustration into fulfillment by cultivating deeper, more conscious and loving connections. With her thriving 24-year marriage as inspiration, and they have such a great relationship. It's so wonderful. Robyn combines practical relationship strategies with emotional healing to create lasting change. Her approach goes beyond communication, reshaping how women experience love and connection. She's a master, as a certified master trauma coach. She specializes in helping clients break free from trauma and unhealthy patterns, restoring harmony within relationships and within themselves. So cool, so cool. So we're diving into relationships and really getting heard. I mean, that's one of the things that I know people really struggle with, and they try so hard and it's exhausting. So I'm curious, what's your take on this? Like, why do so many smart, self-aware women still struggle to actually feel understood and actually feel like somebody's listening and really getting what they're saying, especially in their intimate relationships?
Yeah, it's so common, and it's something I hear a lot too from women who seek my help. And I think there's a couple main reasons that I'm going to share, and one of them is I think for most of us, we were not taught communication skills at home or in school, and so we're still repeating what we've learned based on what our parents or caregivers were modeling in the household and or in school. And so if we haven't actually focused on shifting our style and learning some skills, we probably don't have great skills because most generations didn't have it and didn't pass it down. So, luckily, I think now it's out there more and people are learning more and hopefully passing this on to their kids. So this is part of my work in the world, is to really be a beacon for like, hey, come, this is important, come learn this, and like, let's change our lives with actually getting heard and understood.
Yeah.
So that's one reason, like we just don't have the skills, we're not taught it, we haven't, picked it up anywhere. And then two,
I'm just going to hop in here for a second and say, not only have we not been taught, we're watching, these kids are watching really bad behavior. They're watching people, their parents, not know how to communicate well. So they're not being taught and they're learning really bad skill sets.
hands down, 100% true, yes. Really bad skill sets or no skills at all.
No skill sets, yeah.
Figuring it out as you go and floundering along the way. So yes,
Yes, exactly.
our model of that, unfortunately. So we repeat that. And then there's this thing where we repeat what we learned and and then there's patterns that we develop based on like bad things that happen, like trauma and we call this childhood trauma or developmental trauma, early trauma, stuff that happens that shouldn't have happened, like you didn't get your needs met in some way. And And so then that sets you up for creating some kind of strategy to get through life. And so that might mean you shut yourself down, or you try to please people, or you don't have boundaries because it wasn't safe, or you weren't taught boundaries. So there's these other incidents that can occur, or sort of chronic things that occur in your household that cause you to create unhealthy patterns on your own, let alone like what your parents or caregivers were modeling. So I hope that makes sense for...
It does. It runs deeply. I mean, we're not taught, we're witnessing these things, and then we're experiencing trauma. In addition to all of that, it's no surprise that people are scared to lean in and to share vulnerably, let alone ask for their needs to be met. We've been told to not do that, to fit in, to be the good little girl. So that does not bode well when it comes to communicating what we want or what we desire or what we need to say.
Yes, and you could have like your own insecurities, your own sense of not good enough, so I shouldn't speak, people won't listen to me, or I'll get rejected. All of these layers can be happening internally that can affect what you're willing to say, how you might hold back, or maybe the opposite. And we'll talk about some of those patterns that we might get into more. But the gist is, like, if you haven't addressed some of these things, if you haven't, one, learned good communication skills, or two, addressed your trauma patterns, you're likely to still be repeating the patterns. So when you ask, why are smart women still getting not heard and understood? If they haven't done the work, basically, they're going to still be in the old patterns. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely, for sure. And you talk about empowered communication. I'm curious, what does that actually mean, and what actually happens in a relationship? What's possible when it comes to that connection in a relationship when you have that kind of empowered communication, and why does it matter so much?
Yes. I love that question. It speaks to what you touched on earlier, where if we don't feel, and what I touched on, if we don't feel enough, or if we were taught women should not speak, or children shouldn't speak, or keep yourself small, or you kind of adapted a strategy to do that in order to be liked or get your needs met or not get rejected and things like that, you are disempowered. And children usually aren't empowered anyway, so we have to gain empowerment by whatever means, being acknowledged, and being stepping into our strength in certain ways and our confidence. But so empowered communication is coming from a place of, I matter, what I have to say is important, and people want to hear it, and a place of confidence, in self-confidence. And so when we bring that into our communication, then we're more likely to get our needs met, because we're asking for what we want. You touched on that. Speak up for ourselves in this way. Set boundaries, against what we do not want and do not want to allow in our lives, or in terms of any kind of behavior that we don't want to let in. We're more likely to have more positive connections, because we're getting, those two things are so important. Our needs met by speaking up and setting boundaries, and then coming from a place of this inner strength. I matter, I'm worth it, I deserve connection, I deserve someone listening to me, I deserve people paying attention and not multitasking when they're talking to me, I deserve, getting fully heard and understood. So all of that. So when you have this inner strength, you're going to advocate for yourself, and it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to hurt people. People often have all this baggage, like boundaries are mean, and we shouldn't push people away. But no, we can do these things in a loving, kind, compassionate, heartfelt way, and have that kind of connection. So why it matters is because we can really get so much more satisfaction in our relationships when we're getting our needs met, when we're getting heard, when we're feeling more connection. So all of these tools that I share help us to experience deeper, more meaningful connections in our lives, and not just the chit chat, surface level type of things. So
I love what you're sharing here. I had another podcast earlier. We were talking about being authentic and really being vulnerable and sharing what's going on inside of us, communicating our truth, and how there's so much fear of making a mistake or losing somebody or having somebody pull away their love if we share vulnerably or share our emotions, especially as women. So we've been taught to kind of be the good girl, be the nurturer, all the societal things that have been indoctrinated in us. And then to be able to do this type of work, to be able to feel that empowerment and self-worth, that allows somebody in. To talk about real love and connection, it's not very loving to yourself if you're not getting your needs met or sharing. And it's also not very loving to the other person, in my opinion, because you're not sharing your truth. You're not being open. You're hiding who you are. And of course, there are all these different reasons we're going to get into why this is and the trauma stuff. But at the end of the day, if we're not really revealing our truth and we're not speaking up from this loving, empowered place, we're missing out on that deep intimacy and that partnership that people really desire. Anything you want to share around that?
I mean, 100%. I think I was going to go there in our conversation today. So yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And we'll look at that, like what's in the way, like it seems like, okay, I should share vulnerably, and then people are terrified, and so that's the deeper work, right? Like I can say, do this, do that in your communication.
Right.
And you're going to go, I can't do it. It's too much. I'm
Right.
scared, or they're going to leave me, so
Yeah.
then that's where if you can't just do everything that someone tells you to do in communication skills, there is deeper work to do to unpack what's in the way. What are the fears? What are the blocks, to being more free, more,
Yeah.
feeling more safe, feeling more confident, feeling trusting in yourself, trusting in the process, all of these things that, being able to be vulnerable would bring forth. So.
Yeah. And, it makes me a little frustrated in a way. People have a lot of shame because they have struggles in this arena of speaking up for themselves. On some level, they know, oh, I can learn how to say this in this way, take all these communication skills and classes and read all these books. But if underneath it, they're scared, it creates more angst inside of them, because not only are they feeling the fear, but they think they should be able to do it. What's wrong with me that I just learned all these tools from a life coach or from my therapist? Just speak up. Well, sometimes it's just not that easy when you have a history of getting hurt or being left or being criticized for expressing. So I really want to just say the importance of learning these tools that you and I both teach our clients and doing the deeper work. Because if you don't heal that inner stuff, then they're just tools that are going to be really scary because you don't know really, that you don't have the emotional capacity to hold it. I love that. What would you say are some of the biggest pitfalls you see with women when it comes to communication? Where do they go wrong?
Yeah, well, we just touched on this one, this fear. So when you're afraid to speak your needs, the fear might be because you're afraid of rejection or some kind of judgment. Judgment is rejection, or even deeper, like an abandonment, like someone fully leaves you, right? And that might be, again, based on what happened in early life. If you learn that you only get positive attention when you are a caregiver, when you're nice, when you're good, when you help others and don't help yourself, when you stay small, or other things that could have happened. So this is a big one. Women not speaking up, and then they feel frustrated about it, about not getting their needs met. They feel resentful because, like, I'm always saying yes when I want to say no, or I'm trying to be nice or give.
They're betraying themselves. I mean, that's so painful. When we say yes, when we mean no, we're literally not honoring our truth. The other person doesn't get to know who we are, and we are hiding our needs, and we're not expressing it. It's so painful.
Yeah. So you're not getting seen when you do that. You're not getting understood. You say you want to get seen and understood and heard, and then you hold back because of these fears. So again, I could say, just speak your needs, and you could be like, I terrified. So that's when you know there's deeper work to do if you can't just do the tools that you're taught. So that's one, one pitfall. And then another is blaming. And this is super popular. We learn it in our culture. We learn it from our caregivers. I learned it a lot in my household of origin and in my family. And so blaming is like looking for the fault over there. You did it. Who did it? Somebody did it. What's the source of this problem? And then not taking any responsibility. So this is a big topic that we work with in my programs, and I'm sure you do too, is like looking at our own responsibility for our own part of any dynamic. It's usually it takes two, like we say. And so if we don't look at our own part and we're just in that stance of blaming, what we're creating is more distance. And we say we want connection, we say we want harmony, and then we blame or criticize, even worse, and then we're creating distance. So that's a big pitfall when we fall.
Yeah.
And it's just so easy to do.
It's so easy because it deflects. It's like, well, they did this, they said this, they did this to me. And then we don't see what chips we brought to the party. I mean, I know I did that with my ex for many years. He was this, he was that, And then ultimately I was like, you know what? He was that. Doesn't mean there wasn't bad behavior. He had certain qualities. And I was walking on eggshells. I wasn't expressing my needs. I wasn't sharing my true self because I had such low self-esteem. So there was a part that I brought to that dynamic. And it takes a lot of courage to look at ourselves. And so I really just want to underline, it doesn't mean that the other person didn't do something that you can go, well, I really don't like that behavior or what he did or she did. But at the end of the day, where are you in this? And what story do you have? Where did you have this experience in the past that might be triggering you now to go, "Arr," instead of going, yeah, I see where I'm creating this as well in some way.
Right. So it's both. It's both and. Like,
yes.
Dynamic. Die is two, right? So it takes two, and we both have our part, and we're hooking into each other's patterns super well unconsciously. And so we each have our part to play in unhooking that as well. But often, as I work with a lot of women who are in a partnership, they can learn to unhook their part of the dynamic, and things change. And that's so
things change. And I think that's so wonderful because people think, well, he's not going to do this with me and he's not going to do that with me, and at the end of the day, a lot of times if you shift and change the rules in that dynamic, things change. And again, I remember because my ex-husband, he had a spicy temper and who wanted that? I tried to avoid it like the plague, but as I got stronger and I started speaking up, he would go into his rage. And I would just, instead of like cowering or maybe engaging with that really bad behavior, I would just like, when things calm down, we can talk more. And I would just walk out. And he didn't know what to do with it because it was so not my typical MO. But I changed the dynamic. And well, we didn't end up lasting. But at the end of the day, I got empowered and I was able to change the dynamic. It just didn't last. But I've had clients and couples as well that only one person changed some things, and it was amazing. I love that you brought that up. So you have another pitfall that I want to hear about. Can you share your third one?
Absolutely. So a lot of women tell me that one of their strategies or bad habits is to shut down in communication. I think you spoke to that in your own past relationships. So just like getting small, not saying anything, getting quiet, going silent, walking away, and not that that's not helpful at times. Sometimes it is the best thing you can do is walk out of the room and not engage. But if you don't ever address the issue, if you just shove it under the rug, it's not getting resolved. And then there's distance that gets created because you don't have this resolution. You don't feel like you understand, or you got heard, or you got your needs met. There can be resentment that builds from that, hurt feelings that build from that, lack of trust that builds. And again, this distance that you just feel further and further away because you're walking away and you're not coming back together and repairing. So shutting down is this third pitfall.
Yeah, and I definitely have shrunk in and have shut down in the past. And in my relationship now, because it is a conscious relationship, an empowered relationship, we front load all this stuff early on. How do we
Yes.
handle conflict? What might this look like? Because
So
sometimes
good.
you're not ready for that conversation, and it's not shutting down. It's just choosing a better time so you could actually have that safe container to have that communication
So
and
important.
feel
And that's
safe.
a
Yeah,
boundary. That's a boundary. Not now. When can we do this? Another time. Yeah.
exactly. So keep the dialogue going, and it's so important. But timing is important for sure, and how you communicate for sure. I'd like to shift gears now and ask you about what are some of the early traumatic experiences that people have experienced that have them shutting down or not feeling confident to share their perspective or their needs? Why do they struggle with even being clear about their communication? What are some examples there?
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things that can happen in early life that can again cause us to create different survival strategies, so ways of coping with difficulty. And I'll share three, and there's lots more, but these are common ones that I see. The first one being some kind of neglect. So, a neglect is maybe your parents weren't even there. Like if your parents were working all day, and I was a latchkey kid, or your parents were traveling a lot, or they were bringing you around to different caregivers or whatever it was. Some people have a parent in jail or in the hospital, or so that's not purposeful neglect, but just lack of, attention. Or there can be neglect where they just, ignore you, or there's so many siblings they can't give you enough attention, or there's not being wanted, like even in utero, you weren't wanted. So early stuff that can happen that you don't even necessarily remember, but it makes you feel as an infant and early being that you're not important and you don't matter and you're not worthy of even living, let alone having love. So that's going to really affect your way of showing up in relationships. You're going to be more likely to be that avoidant type who withdraws, who shuts down, who pulls away, because the fear of abandonment is huge in your system. It doesn't even have to be conscious in your mind, but it's just in your wiring. So that's the first one.
I'm going to hop in there with the first one because I so relate. Like my mom and I are so close, but now hated her for many, many years.
Okay.
But one of the things that would happen was and it's like, I don't know how many times it happened, but I just remember being in the back seat while we were driving, and I would be saying something, and just mid sentence, she would just interrupt me and talk to my dad or my brother as if I didn't even exist.
Wow.
And it was so painful that I started on some level going, well, why bother talking? Why bother saying anything? I'm just going to be interrupted. I felt so unheard. And I brought that into my marriage for sure. And that's where these things in the past stay with us until we do that inner work, because I was afraid of not being heard, not being taken care of. I didn't feel important. And inside of me, I felt something was wrong with me on some level. So I better just do everything and just keep my mouth shut until I realized there's history there. And that's the thing about traumas. It goes so deeply and it affects us as adults because we didn't realize how deeply it went in. And we were so impressionable when we were kids because we needed to survive. So I love that you're bringing this in because we have all had experiences that have shaped us in how we connect with people. And so that's a biggie for sure. A message like you're not wanted or you're going to be left in some way. I can see why people may not want to speak up if that's true.
Yeah, or they might do the opposite and overcompensate and be really loud and be really assertive in their communication and be like always need to be the one who's getting listened to because they're compensating for, that pain. So, so anyway, yes, we could have lots of conversations about that. Let's move on to the second one, which is, so I'm going to try and share the nuance here that we call it in my world misattunement. So you could have a caregiver, and it can go as early as like, okay, baby crying, how does your caregiver try to attend to you? Right? And so nobody knows exactly why the baby's crying all the time. Nobody's going to do it perfectly, like, oh, you're hungry, or you have a wet diaper, or whatever. They're guessing, right? But if a caregiver isn't tuned in enough, either just totally ignores it again, or they're not sensitive enough to even try to fix it, to help, to pay attention. Maybe they don't give eye contact, so you don't feel seen and like you're again important, or getting connected to. And some of what you spoke of in your example is like a misattunement too, where you're not, like, there wasn't this attention. Oh, you're speaking, like, I hear you, and let me just respond to my husband over here. Like, that would have been more helpful for you and more attuning to you than just breaking in and ignoring. So anyway, when you have a misattunement, when you don't feel attuned to, when your needs aren't getting, at least trying to get met, then you might be someone, like I was saying, who might overcompensate or try the reverse and try to meet others' needs, because it's super painful to feel my needs aren't going to be met. I'm going to be abandoned again or rejected. And so you might be that person who's then overcompensating by, like, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? So I don't have any needs, but it's all about your needs. And then I get to feel like I matter, I have a purpose, and I don't have to feel the pain of not getting my needs met because I just completely deny them. So this is a pattern that a lot of people have, and then what it can lead to is a lack of authenticity, which we touched on earlier, because you're not being true in who you are and what you actually need. And then it can lead to resentment, because you're overriding your own needs to take care of others because you feel like that's the way to stay connected, and the people pleasing, or other patterns that we've talked about. So this is a super common trauma that I see, and a lot of caregivers have this. We go into the caregiver profession because it feels good to serve and meet others' needs, and not, it can also feel good to serve, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we are in that from this place of, I don't want to have needs, it's easier just to give, then we're missing our authenticity.
Yeah. So you've given us 2 examples of early traumas, and I know you have a third one. Please let us know what that third one is, and what can this woman do about it? What are some next steps? Because knowing about it and doing something about it, those are 2 different things.
Absolutely. Okay, last type of trauma I'm bringing up here is when you've had a lot of harsh punishment, maybe parents who are authoritarian or very controlling, and you weren't allowed to be yourself. So you were pushed down, kept down, and maybe you only got acknowledgement for when you did well. Then that might cause you to feel like you can't fully express, and you might turn into a people pleaser, somebody who says yes when they mean no, because you're afraid of, maybe early on punishment, but now as an adult, rejection or abandonment. So that's a brief way to summarize that, but that is really common. I meet with a lot of women who are super good at people pleasing and super afraid of saying no. So if that's you, just note that. Don't be hard on yourself, and know that there is a solution.
Yeah. So tell us, what are some next steps?
Yeah. So 3 areas to address. So say you've got, you want to learn communication skills. Great. I highly recommend it. I teach that. We're going to talk about that. But 3 areas to address when you have some early trauma is, 1, your nervous system, because when you've got early trauma, or you've got some kind of shock trauma too, like a big accident or thing that happened in your life, you got to address your nervous system. And if you don't, you're going to find yourself anxious, you're going to find yourself shutting down, you're going to find yourself frozen. So when we address our nervous system, we're more able to connect because we're more calm, and we're in a state that's more able to listen and be receptive and engage with people. So this is a key piece that I teach all my clients. The second one is we've already touched on your self-worth. So if you're trying to learn communication skills, but you still feel really insecure about who you are and unimportant and I don't matter and nobody loves me and I'm not good enough, you got to address that because it's going to affect your capacity to show up and again, ask for your needs or set a boundary and things like that. And the third area to address is unresolved emotions. So when we have early trauma, we're likely to have emotions that, or an emotional process that didn't get completed because it wasn't safe. We weren't allowed to be sad. We weren't allowed to be angry. Those are two key emotions that I work with a lot. And so if you don't work through that stuff, it's still coming out in you, or you're still coping with it, like by shutting it down, or like sending it out sideways and being really mean to people or being aggressive or punching things or whatever you do with old anger or old grief or sadness that hasn't been dealt with. So these are key areas to address if you want to have healthy relationships and if you want to have healthy communication and be able to be in connection without like old stuff coming up and getting in the way. I hope that makes sense.
It totally does, and that's the thing. It's like we need to break these patterns, otherwise we end up in these vicious cycles, and there's drama and there's pain, and the one thing that everybody wants, which is connection and joy, that's out the window, you know. And if everything is pushed down, it does come out sideways. We end up saying things we don't mean, and people get hurt. So what if a woman finds herself stuck in these patterns, like notices that she's not speaking up, or she is shutting down, or it's just not the way she wants it? Are there any quick turnarounds that you can offer to the person who's listening right now? And anybody who's watching the YouTube, put some comments below if you have any questions or comments. We want to hear what your takeaway is. Is this resonating with you? Do you have this challenge? Do you have a question for Robyn? Please put it in the chat box, in the messaging below.
I love answering questions. So I'm going to give you 3 simple tips that you can start to work into your communication style. And some of these are kind of supporting positive communication. You mentioned an example with your partner around this. So 1, eye contact. People often, if you want to feel seen and heard, eye contact helps people know they're getting seen and heard. And you can also ask for eye contact. If someone's multitasking with you, looking at the paper, or if you're having a conversation and someone's not present, then you can ask for that. Like Junie said, like you can make a time to have the conversation. So eye contact, ask for that, and give that, because it helps you feel like you're having a better connection. So that's 1.
Oh, I want to hop in there because you made me think, like, my mother would interrupt me, or I felt like she wasn't listening. And so my ex-husband, he was notoriously typing on the computer or on his phone, and he'd be like, I'm listening, and it totally triggered me because I knew you really are not listening. You're not being present. And then of course I'm like, and so I didn't have the skill set back then, but ultimately I was able to say, when you do this, it reminds me of, and this is how it makes me feel, and could you give me your full presence? But of course that was not what happened. It was like, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and then it's like, well, God bless him. But anyway, but these are the things, it's like I was so triggered by that. And if I do see somebody on their phone and they're not listening, I just stop talking, and until I'll literally say, I was like, oh, just finish what you're doing. We can talk when you're finished. And if they say, oh, I'm listening, I would say something like, I'd rather your full presence. Let me know when you're done. Just gently, just lovingly. And if they have an issue with that, then we talk about it. But that's my deep self-care and honoring of my importance and being able to do the inner work. So I'm not like, you're not listening to me, versus, hey, I'll wait till you're finished. So what else you got?
Yep, and Junie, I've had the same trauma.
All right.
Where I demand, like, if we're going to have an important conversation, I need your full attention, and you can do that without being mean or harsh, but ask for it, or just set the stage for that.
Exactly. Self-care, healthy boundaries. That's what builds a great relationship. Everybody wins.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, second one, consent. So this is where, and you sort of touched on this earlier too, where you set the stage for the conversation. I need to have an important conversation. Are you available? That is asking for consent, asking for, can we do this? When's a good time? Is now a good time? If not, when? So you're just setting the stage for this conversation to have the best outcome possible because you're asking for presence. And I don't mean just eye contact here, but actually someone's emotionally available. They're not overwhelmed already with whatever else they're dealing with. They're physically available. They're in the room. They're giving the eye contact. They're energetically available. They're not going to fall asleep on you. They're physically not hungry, so that their like blood sugar's okay, they can be present, like all the things. So you want to set the tone for the best outcome if you're going to have an important conversation.
Yeah. Yes. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, consent, and hopefully both people can tune into their yes on that, right, and give that. So a third one is a simple boundary to get your needs met, and I'm going to give an example. You already did. Like I don't like. I'll wait for you to put your phone down, right, and then we can have the conversation. That's setting a boundary. Or another boundary might be if someone is asking, "Hey, I need to talk to you like now," and you can say, "Actually, I'm not available now, but how about at 8 o'clock?" That's a simple boundary that you can set to honor yourself and also honor the connection. Right? So if you're on the receiving end, am I available? Let me check with myself. Let me check with my calendar. Let me see. Can I do this now? So that's a way to honor first and foremost yourself, but like I said, the relationship as well. So simple boundaries that you can set, honoring your own limitations, your own capacity is a beautiful way to honor the relationship as well.
And it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. People are scared of boundaries. They think that's going to separate people and not bring them closer. And I just really want to underline that when we communicate with a loving heart and clear, and we're taking care of ourselves, we're connecting in a different way. It's not a boundary of pushing away. It's actually an invitation for a deepening. And I think that's where people have gotten a little messed up around this, is that fear of, if I say no, I'm going to get hurt, versus it's an invitation for people to actually really get to know you. And no doesn't have to mean forever. It just means I'm not available right now, but how about tomorrow? And that lets people know that you want to talk to them, that they matter, and that you're actually wanting to spend time with them, quality time, that you could actually be fully present, because you really want to be half-assed when you talk to them. So we need to reframe that boundary thing. Let's just pull it all together now. And I'm just curious, is there one step or one thought you have that you want to leave this woman with when it comes to using what's one powerful insight or step you wish every woman knew about creating connection through communication? Let's bring it home here.
Yeah. I would say that I'm not going to give you a step as much as an insight, which is it's possible. It is possible to have relationships that feel supportive and connecting and meaningful. And it takes some work for most of us to get there. So the insight would be, it's normal to feel like you're not there. Most people don't have a lot of really satisfying connections, and with the right support and the right practices and education and patience, you can get there. You can learn and shift internally and do the work to get you to a place where your relationships really feel fulfilling and feel
right?
supportive.
It's so worth it. It's so worth it. And it doesn't have to be such heavy lifting. It can, together you can do it. And it's just so worth it when you have these skills and you want to build that relationship. I love that. I know you have something really special you want to share with this listener. What might you have to offer them?
Yes, I've got a couple things. So one is just anytime you're listening, whether it's, when we put this out or years later, I have what I call the communication checklist. And actually called the Connection Cure Checklist. And takes about 2 minutes to go through. I highly recommend it because I give 10 points for you to check off, am I doing this? And if not, I give you a tip for how to do it or what needs to shift. So you can get a lot of great communication skills right in that simple checklist. So I highly recommend you get that. And we'll have a link for you here. And the other is that depending on the timing when you're listening, I have a communication training where I talk about some incredible and powerful communication skills so you can get empowered. And I give you those skills in this free training, and we're gonna talk about boundaries as well. So some skills to get your needs met, to feel more connected, to set healthy boundaries. And that's my connection code communication training. So I hope to see you there. And it's so fun. And we get to do this in person together and on Zoom actually, but we get to meet
in person on Zoom. We get to see each other.
So I hope I get to meet you there. And people walk away with a lot of skills from that training, and their relationships start to change. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We will put those links in the show notes. Robyn, what a joy. As always, you lay down so many golden nuggets. Thank you so much for your time.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for having me, Junie. It was always a pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, you're so welcome. All right, that's our episode. Please put some comments and questions. Share where you are when it comes to communication. Do you shut down? Do you walk away? Do you get very dramatic and try to get your point across? Let us know where you're at, and we will certainly read your comments. So until we meet again, mwah! One more thing before you go. Have you taken my Discover Your Love Avatar quiz? It's a 2-minute quiz that can help you not only know your strengths, your superpower, because you have one, also identify some of your blind spots, some of the things that might be having you in your fear, having you behaving in ways that aren't in alignment with your highest self, the way you want to be when it comes to dating and relationships. And it'll also help you discover why maybe the stars haven't lined up for you yet. Bottom line is, you take this 2-minute quiz, you get a full report in your email with details on how to move forward in next level love, whether you want a partner or not. So you can go to midlifeloveoutloud.com/love quiz. The link is in the show notes as well. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the station, I'm going to encourage you to do that too, so you don't miss any episodes. And I hope you got a ton out of today's. See you next week. Mwah.